Hi everyone and welcome to my review of Alfred Hitchcock's Rope in 1948. Now, yet another Hitchcock review, and I've been reviewing quite a lot of his films recently. What can I say? He's one of my five favourite directors of all time. I really don't think that will ever change, actually. I just think he's one of the finest to ever lived. I agree with people who say, that talk about him like that as one of the absolute best directors. And at times, he's only really beaten by one or two directors for me. And yes, I've seen 16 of his films now. This is another rewatch. And yes, it's in this collection that I have, which is one of my best collections actually. It is the Masterpiece Collection, and it comes out like a little book. It's really, really good. I would recommend this. I think it's around about £30 now actually in places. Maybe you can get it for 20. It comes with, quite a lot of films. There it is, Rope. And after that is Rear Window. It misses out some, but, for a Hitchcock collection, it's probably the best one, actually, considering everything, including the price. But Rope is from this, and I didn't really, this was one of my first Hitchcocks that I ever saw, because it was... I'd seen the big five, Hitchcocks before this. Psycho, Birds... Vertigo, North by Northwest, and Rear Window. You could say they're the big five. Maybe not the Birds, but it's I suppose it's one of his most famous in that sense. So yeah, the big five really. And then I saw Rope, and it's at the time it was a very mixed reception. A lot of people said it was too stagey. Of course, it is based off a play of the same name. And they said that it was just Star Over Substance, the actual the takes and everything. They said that got in the way of it, and it just didn't work. Roger Ebert famously gave it 2 out of 4. And, but over the years it's definitely grown, and, Hitchcock maybe would have been quite surprised about, how much people actually love the film now and recognise it for what it is. He only considered it at the time an experiment that kind of failed. And I guess that's probably due to the backlash and everything, but critically and stuff. But yeah, maybe he just didn't, at the time, he actually, as an example, I've seen an interview really a few years after Rear Window, and it's talking about the film as if it was just one of his ones that, his small films that never really, because of the commercial success it is, you see, and, Rear Window is, is now one of the most popular Hitchcocks, one of the most popular films of all time, and it's just due to, these films growing. Vertigo as well, it was not, really shown for many years after its release. It was kind of like a lost film, and now it's some people say it's the best film of all time. So Hitchcock, a lot of his films, because he's made so many as well, a lot of his films have grown over time in people's estimations, and Rope is one of them for sure. I didn't expect, obviously, as I say, the best of films, but I was really surprised when I first saw it back in September last year. This is a rewatch, and just as good as I remembered, better than I remembered actually, as always. And it's just, I just can't see how anyone would call this a failed experiment, because it does not feel experimental, I don't feel, even though of course, in the sense that no one really had done this before like this, this kind of film. In the sense of the kind of seems to be a continuous shot of the film, and it's an 80-minute film, very short. Very, very short, and it is like a play in that sense. What it reminds me actually of is Abigail's Party. That is a stunning piece, and that's like a play, and it's very, very similar actually in the way that it's not really, it's not stagey in that sense, because the characters are very grounded and stuff, and it seems like a very natural thing that goes on, but it has got play sort of elements and stuff. And the way it progresses is actually very similar to this film. Maybe took inspiration from that, Mike Leigh. But yes, Rope is a stunner. And from the very beginning scene, we're aware really of the rest of the film, you could say. The setup, it sets up what the rest of the film is really, and certainly the first 10 minutes you're really aware of everything really, and it's just a case of how everyone reacts to what's going on in that setup. And basically, you see this guy called David getting strangled, straight in front of the camera. That's the first shot, really, of actual someone in the film. And Farley, Granger, and Dall play the two lead characters, really, you could say. Although, of course, Jimmy Stewart comes into it. We'll get to that. And yes, they strangle him, and you know, they kind of are doing an experiment, you know, and they put him in the trunk, you know, the chest, and basically there's a party that they're throwing as well, and especially, you know, John Dall, his character of Brandon, you know, he's the one that really wants to go ahead with this, and then Farley Granger's character, you know, Philip, is really unsure of it, and he's, you know, he keeps stressing about everything and stuff, and he really didn't want to go ahead with it. Obviously, it's quite clear. But you could say that really, as well, you know, once Jimmy Stewart comes into it, basically, as well, these two guys, they're not really the protagonists anymore. You know, Jimmy Stewart kind of becomes the protagonist. Well, I suppose it kind of depends, this one, actually, who you side with, really. Because, you know, it's not like a proper film with a traditional narrative in that sense. It's very, very different. And it really, yeah, it depends whose side you take on it. Because it really is, it's centered around this event, and really it's just the different viewpoints of what's happened and stuff. Kind of take what you want from it, really, in that sense. Yeah, but really for me, Jimmy Stewart is actually the eventual protagonist, and these two guys in particular, you know, John Dall's character, are the villains, you could say. But yes, they kill him, they put him in the trunk, and then after the 10-minute mark or so, the party kind of starts going underway, and more people join the party in this apartment. And it's just very gradual, you know, they come into play, and then, you know, you end up with quite a few people there. And yes, they keep asking where this character of David is. And, you know, everyone just keeps getting suspicious. And of course, he's right there with them in the party, you know, in the room. And it's just something so unique about that, so genius, you know, the dramatic irony, you know. Really, that's one of the key things of a play in particular, you know, and traditional plays and stuff, is that, you know, audience kind of shouting, saying, you know, someone's there, and they're knowing something, but the actual characters aren't. And, you know, of course, people, you know, filmmakers quite quickly realised that the dramatic irony in that sense was one of the best tools a filmmaker could use. And this really is a perfect example of that. You know, like Rear Window is kind of pure cinematic voyeurism. You know, a perfect example of that. You know, this is an example, really, of just what dramatic irony is and how it can be used to an effect in a film. And it's used perfectly. You know, it's absolutely unbelievable. What it does really is just it drives the film from start to finish. That, you know, that sense that this character of David is dead, and he's there the whole time for the film, really, you know, in that play, in that chest. And it's all the other characters, you know, the tension because of that, you know, some of the characters are at times, you know, about to open it, you know, and stuff, and putting things on top of it like books and everything, and just the level of tension because of that, it's just genius, you know. The way that Hitchcock kind of directs this film as well, it's just stunning. Of course, you know, the most famous thing about the film is the fact that it is kind of a seamless take. It appears to be, but of course, because of the film rules and the length of time, of course, you know, it's every so often Hitchcock kind of zooms in to the back of a character, or, you know, or the chest at times as well, and then, you know, it goes to black, of course, but it tries to obviously conceal it. And yeah, it really is seamless. You know, you unless you actually look, sometimes you don't actually know that it is, you know, it is different takes. And yes, you know, I was a bit sceptical, you know, before going into the film, because I thought that's very, very risky. You know, long takes in cinema can be done really, really well. Other times, not so much. And also, there's a sense that there's sometimes less skill involved in just doing a long take, in the sense that sometimes it can be used in a sort of lazy effect, if you know what I mean, maybe. That's just the way I feel. There are those that perfect it, you know, and actually as well, Mizoguchi was very known for that, and the Story of the Last Chrysanthemum is actually was really quite perfect in that sense, but, you know, his style developed over time. But, you know, Ozu would kind of do some long takes as well, but this is to another level. But it is very risky, and you know, sometimes I'm not too impressed when people do that. You know, I do think overall that there's more merit in, you know, more cuts, and just, you know, because as well, usually the sense it comes in hand that a filmmaker plans it more, you know, in that sense, and frames it, you know, more when it is, short takes, more cuts, if you know what I mean. Like Psycho, Hitchcock Psycho, perfect example of that. There's many cuts, and it's more precise than a lot of the long take films. But this really, if you look at the actual framing of it, it never loses any sense of the skill and the craft in that sense of the actual framing and the way the camera moves. It's not just randomly moving about, which it could have easily been, just as a gimmick, which some people still describe the film as. And obviously I really disagree with that, because it's not, it's perfectly planned out. And actually when you you watch the film, the more you watch the film, you really, it's quite unbelievable how hard it must have been, because there's one scene actually where John Dall's character is kind of goes into the kitchen, and the door kind of swings open, and you see every time the door obviously comes into a shot, and you see him doing something different, and it's all timed perfectly. Actually a lot went into this. It's unbelievable. And how hard it must have been to kind of keep up the, everything going on and stuff. And the camera never moves randomly. There's always a point. It's just perfect visual storytelling. Still, it doesn't lose the sense of that, or the craft. But it does give it a more. It's also used to affect it to build the tension even more. It's such a tense film, and when you cut a lot of the time, it kind of, in a sense, in a sense, that really is just the relieving of tension, and stuff, and suspense. It can be anyway. Of course, scenes go on where there's many cuts and the tension still maintains, but there's something about a long take that can keep, hold that tension in a particular way. And Hitchcock done that throughout the entire film. And the finale's a bit more, different to the rest of the film. Last 10 minutes. And of course, once Jimmy Stewart comes into it, it does change. But in that sense, it's a very, very simple film. Very, very simple on the surface, but so much went into this. In terms of how much. How to keep everything going while, not being able to cut really in that sense at times. It's really unbelievable. And the characters in this film as well, wonderful characters. All the members of the party, that takes place in the apartment, are all really memorable. They've all got their own backstories. It's great exposition in this film, wonderful exposition. And the fact that Jimmy Stewart is actually their past teacher, kind of the three guys, David included. Of course, he's dead. It's really, really well done. So well done. The exposition is just wonderful. And Jimmy Stewart's character in particular is just masterful. Really is. The writing, the performance. Now, this is Jimmy Stewart's first appearance in a Hitchcock film, and of course he would. Go on to do Rear Window and Man You Too Much remake, and Vertigo, of course. And this was his first one, and many have actually criticised his performance, saying that he's miscast and stuff. I really don't get that, because in this film he gives an absolutely stunning performance, wonderful performance, and it's actually, he's so good in this film actually, and the fact that when he starts discovering things. The expressions on his face and stuff, it's actually quite scary, and because at first as well you kind of not siding with them, but at least Farley Granger's character, you kind of with them, and then Jimmy Stewart, really, if you kind of think about what protagonists and antagonists are, Jimmy Stewart is the villain, you could say, certainly when he comes into it, because he's the one who's kind of going against them. He's trying to, he's hatching their, plan, and he's kind of, stopping their line, in that sense, obstructing what they're trying to do, their mission, and that stories, that is what an antagonist is really. But then as the film goes on, Jimmy Stewart, I kind of sided with him, and he became the protagonist. But yeah, it's just the way that this film, just changes halfway through as well, actually. And just develops, keeps building and building, and it always seems really natural, even though it is, of course, quite obviously long takes. You're not fully aware of it at times because you get so immersed in the film, but also as well, it never feels stagey, which is what some people have said. It doesn't feel stagey, it just is, of course, very, it is very cinematic in that sense. And yes, at times, the characters, they face the camera more, like in a play and stuff, but it never is a flaw. It only just adds to the experience, really. I really think this is a perfect film, actually. But yes, the characters are also stunning, and you know, just the way that Jimmy Stewart, the relationship and the backstory that he has in relation to the characters, and the way he keeps just trying to uncover things, and he's just giving glances and stuff. So well done, just masterful, really. What Jimmy Stewart could do, was stunning. Jimmy Stewart is in my top 5 actors of all time. There's a spoiler. I think, there's maybe one actor, maybe 2 actors at times that I think are better, but really, certainly, at his time and stuff, for when he was actually going, really he was the best for me, and certainly the most likeable as well. He's always so likeable and relatable, really, in his films, and he's just stunning. He's an absolutely wonderful actor, and also so always so warm. And that's the thing about this film. It's so warm. It's got so much warmth to the film, just through everything, and the charm of it as well. It's just stunning. There's a lot of comedy. It's black comedy. It could be considered a black comedy. But at the end of the day, it is a thriller, and a masterful one at that. So overall, Rope is a flawless masterpiece in my eyes, and as well, it actually adds quite a lot of humanity. It has a lot of humanity. The film, a thing I didn't mention, just the way that kind of they discuss the value of life. When they're on about inferior beings and stuff. Just the way that comes into play, and Jimmy Stewart's character, the way he kind of makes it grounded and just kind of debating the actual morals of it all. And Jimmy Stewart's character in particular, so warm, and just this is a stunning film. It's really flawless for me. I don't really see how people can say it's a failed experiment. I just don't see that. Personally, for me, I think it's a true masterpiece, and every single moment of this film is just so tense. It just hooks you straight away. It's just so enjoyable, and all the characters are so great. All the different subplots as well, all the different side characters. They're only mainly in it for the middle of the film. Once the party ends, they're gone. But yeah, everything just comes together so well as well. With the side characters that are there for the actual party itself, and of course, just the way that Jimmy Stewart's character as well is just constantly, first of all he's suspicious, and then he starts, uncovering things. It's so well done, and Jimmy Stewart is just, as I've said, he's just a master, actor. He was so good. It's just, at times I've considered him to be, for me, my favourite actor. And this is one of his many. I've never seen him give a less than great performance. Not a bad performance, less than great. He's always been something. I've seen him, I think, of 7 films of him now, something like that. And this is one of his many masterful roles. Really stunning. And this film is just wonderful. Some people have put it in his top 5 films now, Hitchcock, and I certainly understand that. Not quite there for me still, because the top 5 are very, very hard to top, actually, for me. It's a very solid top 5 I've got, and yes, Psycho is one of them. But yes, it really, Rope for me is 100% plus tier 2. It's that good, and just like Stranger on the Train, it just gets in there. It's not like a instant tier 2. But, that and Stranger on a Train actually are very, very close in terms of my preference. But it's just another masterpiece from Hitchcock, another flawless masterpiece at that, Stunning from start to finish, cared about all the characters, and I was constantly on the edge of my seat. It really is the definition of a thriller, and a claustrophobic one, in a tight space. And of course, a play, adapted from a play, it's got its unique qualities there. The acting's wonderful, stunning, and it's just, you feel very different things, a lot of different things for all the characters, really, the main characters. The way it kind of adds, deals with questions of life and stuff, the value of life. It's done in a really, really great way as well. It's very, very natural, the dialogue and stuff, but it does have that unique kind of play feel in a way as well. And of course, Hitchcock's, the kind of choice to do the seamless camera movements and the shots. Wonderful, really. I can't say, you know, I usually talk about the editing, but really it's the lack of editing that makes it so good. In that sense, yeah, the editing is very, very, you know, I can't really talk too much about that. It's not, you know, like Raging Bull, where I can, you know, get into the many cuts and the timing and everything. It is just, you know, it's just kind of just cinematography, this film. You can't really talk about the editing. It's the lack of the editing. Really, the only editing is the bits, you know, of course, where he tries to hide the, you know, the end of the film reel, you know, kind of thing. But yeah, direction, cinematography, the music as well, all the characters, and just the way that this progresses and ends up to a conclusion that is really quite moving, actually. And you know, you definitely feel, I felt quite a lot for this, and you know, at times I didn't know what to feel, but just the way as well that Hitchcock plays with dramatic irony throughout the entire film. This film is just a definition of so many different elements and tools of filmmaking, you know, techniques. It's just stunning. One of the best films of the 40s that I've seen. Among the best films of all time, once again, like all the Hitchcocks I've reviewed thus far on my channel. You know, I don't think it's as good as Lady Vanishes or anything like that. You know, that's still the best I've reviewed on this channel, if you wanted to know that. But it's another masterpiece, and if you've not seen Rope, you know, and you like films as well that like Rear Window in this kind of same location, and you love thrillers and you just love cinema, Rope is definitely going to be a one for you, I would say. And of course, as always, this collection, go out and buy it if you've got the money, because it's absolutely stunning. And yeah, Hitchcock's Rope, unbelievable film, and I absolutely adore it. It's unbelievable. But yeah, another masterpiece, and thanks for watching my review.